Welcome to this explainer. If you're joining me today, it means you've already got a pretty formidable grasp of the English language. You're comfortable, you're fluent, and you can communicate some seriously complex ideas. But today, well, our goal is to elevate your academic writing from simply being fluent to being absolutely masterful. We're going to look closely at a vital structural tool that literally separates good writers from exceptional ones: advanced relative clauses. So today, we'll visually unpack exactly how to deploy these clauses with absolute precision. Let's get right into it.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll cover the power of relative clauses, the defining versus non-defining rules, the step-by-step combination method, some C2 application and practice, and finally, the rules and a quick recap.
All right, starting with Section 1, the power of relative clauses and how we transition from fluency to true mastery. Let's establish right off the bat that relative clauses aren't just grammar drills. They are the absolute secret to elegant, professional academic writing. They let you embed dense information seamlessly without totally overwhelming your reader. So what exactly is a defining relative clause? Well, it provides essential information, meaning if you were to physically cover up that part of the sentence with your hand, the rest of it wouldn't just be a little less detailed, it would be fundamentally confusing. You wouldn't even know who or what the subject is. Because this info is so vital to the very identity of the subject, absolutely no commas are used. The clause is just locked right into the sentence.
In contrast, non-defining clauses give us bonus information. The sentence already makes perfect sense without it, but you, as the masterful writer, are choosing to inject some extra context. And because this is just extra information, the commas here actually act as structural load-bearing elements. Think of commas like a pair of handles that let you pick up the clause and literally lift it entirely out of the sentence. If the sentence still makes perfect sense when you lift that clause away, boom, you are looking at a non-defining clause.
Moving right along to Section 2, the step-by-step combination method. Let's look at building elegant sentences.
Okay, keep these 3 logical steps in mind because they are the absolute key to unlocking C2 grammatical accuracy. Step 1, look at your raw information and decide what the main subject is and what's just the modifier. Step 2, select your pronoun carefully. Are we talking about a person, an object, a place, or possession? Ask yourself this every single time. And finally, Step 3, which is honestly the most critical part for academic writing, dictate your punctuation. Is the info identifying the subject or just adding a little flavor to it? Stick to these 3 steps and they will never fail you.
Okay, Section 3, C2 application and practice. Let's do a deep dive.
Now, I want you to apply this method to a few illustrative examples. Let's look at this one. Marie Curie was a pioneering scientist, and she discovered radium and polonium. Take a deliberate pause here. Mentally construct the combination using our 3 steps before we reveal the answer. Our subject is Marie Curie, and the extra info is her discovery. She's a person, so we're going to use the pronoun who. But ask yourself, is the name Marie Curie already specific? Do we actually need the discovery of radium to know who she is? And this brilliantly illustrates a non-defining clause. We already know exactly who Marie Curie is. Her name is entirely specific. Therefore, the fact that she discovered radium and polonium is just bonus academic context. That makes those commas absolutely mandatory. Just notice how elegantly the combined version flows compared to those choppy, separate sentences. You're embedding her achievements directly into her identity as a pioneering scientist.
Let's try another one. The building collapsed during the earthquake, and it had been declared unsafe years earlier. Pose this challenge to yourself. Think carefully about whether the building's safety status is essential or just extra info. I mean, think about the phrase, the building. If I just walk up to you and say, hey, the building collapsed, your immediate first question is going to be, which building?
Right, because the building is completely unspecific on its own, this is a defining clause, which means 0 commas. The phrase, which had been declared unsafe years earlier, is exactly what identifies the subject for your reader. If you put commas here, you'd basically be telling the reader, oh, you already know which building I'm talking about, and hey, by the way, it was unsafe. But we don't know which building it is until the clause actually does its job.
Okay, let's try a slightly trickier scenario involving possession. How do we bridge these ideas at a C2 level? We have the candidate, and we have his application. The application clearly belongs to the candidate. In a C2 academic text, writing 2 completely separate sentences like this just feels, well, a little amateurish. we need a pronoun that shows possession.
Now, what's really interesting here is the logic of using whose to show possession, neatly bracketed by our structural commas. Assuming we're already discussing a specific candidate in our paragraph, this becomes a non-defining clause. The word whose perfectly connects the applicant to that flawed application, allowing the main action, the rejection, to act as the anchor of the whole sentence. It's fluid, it's precise, and it's highly professional. All right, with the core mechanics mastered, let's accelerate a bit and apply our C2 grammatical reasoning to a wider set of academic scenarios. I want you to try and spot the defining and non-defining patterns instantly as we look at these next few examples. See how swiftly we can categorize these? Take Venice, for example. It's a unique, specific, proper noun, so it automatically gets a non-defining comma. The geographical fact that it's built on water, beautiful, extra detail. But looking at the other example, the generic word researcher absolutely needs a defining clause to be identified. We need to know which researcher published the paper. It's the one who specializes in quantum genetics. So, 0 commas. Again, observe the really powerful usage of which and whose surrounded by commas to inject context seamlessly. In both of these cases, the context implies we already know which policy or which novelist we're discussing in our essay. The commas just let us layer in the timeline of the policy or the themes of the novelist, without derailing the main point of the sentence, which is a reduction in emissions in the receiving of the award. We'll wrap up our rapid expansion by contrasting the defining that and who clauses with this beautifully descriptive non-defining manuscript example. With the students, it wasn't just any students who achieved top scores, it was specifically the defining group who attended the intensive course. But look at that manuscript example. We use the commas to frame the phrase, which is believed to date back to the 15th century. It literally reads exactly like a placard in a high-end museum.
Okay, moving to Section 5, Rules and Final Recap, securing that C2 accuracy.
The difference between a B2 writer and a C2 writer often comes down to self-editing. As an advanced writer, there are critical pitfalls you simply have to avoid, especially the temptation to use the word that when a comma is present. This is rule number 1. You can say the building that collapsed, but you can absolutely never say Venice, that is built on water. That and commas are mortal enemies in relative clauses. Furthermore, don't let your sentences get sloppy by forgetting those structural commas when adding extra context. It entirely changes the underlying logic of your paragraph.
So, keep these quick revision tips in mind whenever you're editing your own academic drafts. I highly recommend actually doing the lift-out test. When reading over your essays, visually identify your clauses. If you mentally lift the clause out of the sentence and the subject suddenly becomes totally vague, delete those commas immediately. And once again, let me repeat, never, ever use the word that right after a non-defining comma. Treat those commas as structural anchors that hold the whole architecture of your ideas together.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. I challenge you to take immediate control of your writing style. Grammar at the C2 level isn't about just passing a test. It's about wielding language as an instrument of precision. By actively choosing whether a clause is defining or non-defining, you are taking absolute control over exactly how your reader processes your information. So the next time you sit down to write, don't just connect words. Engineer your clauses, master the comma, and take control of your narrative. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really look forward to seeing your writing reach that masterful level.